Hello philosophers. This video is divided into three parts. First we'll talk about the lyrics, what they actually mean, the breakdown explanation, what's underneath the lyrics, or sort of the summary of what they're talking about. Then we'll talk about the problem that we all face in life and what this song is about. And then we'll talk about the solutions. Because philosophy is not just about thinking, it's about actually understanding, and there's no point talking for hours and hours and thinking about life if we don't reach any conclusion, if we don't come to some sort of a solution or at least an idea that can help make our lives better. So here it goes. Here's the breakdown. I'm not going to repeat all the lyrics because it is a song after all, so there is a lot of poetic rhyming and aesthetic sounding tunes and repetitions, and so I highlighted the important parts that just summarize everything. And this song is about a woman who's daydreaming or dreaming in the sleep, or apparently all day, every day, about a man in her life, but she's committed and she can't really reach to that desire and acquire it because the cost is too high. She doesn't want to betray. So she says four things throughout the entirety of the song is about her saying four things. The number one thing she says, I got a man but I want you. So this is a desire despite commitment. She is committed but she wants someone else. Then she says, I try to hide it in my face and it don't work, you see through, that I just want to get with you. And the second thing is about inability to hide intentions. She is aware of these feelings and she tries to hide them from her crush, but she fails at it. She's so miserably failing that she's aware that she's failing. She knows that the other person sees right through her. Later on she says, I can't stop and look the other way because I know it could be big and you never feel the same. And this is the third thing. This is about the doubts about reciprocation of feelings. She is confused and afraid and a little bit interested in finding out or worried that what the other person feels about her. Whether these feelings, that emotions that she's feeling, this desire, is it the same in his mind as well? Or is it just one-sided? And this is a very common thing. A lot of people have feelings about not just in the people who are already in relationships, but generally when people have crushes and feelings about other people or some sort of attraction, they are intimidated in the sense that they don't know what the other person is thinking or feeling. They try to figure it out indirectly to prevent any rejection, and they don't want to feel humiliated in any way, and they don't want to feel like they're not attractive or they're not worthy, and they just daydream about these like hypothetical scenarios where the other person is feeling the same feelings. But a lot of people struggle with this very fact, and this is a major problem, but we'll talk about this at some other time. There is a solution to this. I mean, there's a solution to everything. If you think about it, if we start like using our mind as a machine to solve problems, we can figure out anything, and not just individually in our personal lives, but even in humankind. There's no disease we cannot solve. There is no problem too big for us like human race. But I don't want to get into that, at least not right now. So then she says, don't believe in fairy tales, but we got our fantasies. Now this is interesting because she is definitely not naive. Like she knows, she is aware. This is the fourth thing. This is awareness of fantasy, not fairy tale. She's not imagining this as some story that she sees in movies or like books and like folk tales, like Romeo and Juliet, like things like that. She's aware that this is not a fairy tale because real life doesn't operate like that. And she's aware, but she's also aware that we can at least have our fantasies. So these are the four things that she said. In the entire song, she's basically talking about the desire despite her commitment, the inability to hide intentions, the doubts about reciprocation of feelings, and awareness of this being a fantasy, not a fairy tale. Now let's see what the guy says. Girl, I want you like you want me two. So number one is confirmation of reciprocation of feelings. He agrees, he confirms that he has those feelings as well, and this oftentimes is the truth. Like when both people have this sort of fears of confronting or confessing to the other person, and they are both attracted, because communication happens non-verbally. Like more than 90% of the time it happens non-verbally. So we are subconsciously aware that the other person are interested in talking to us and spending time with us, but consciously they did not say those words. They did not make a gesture like that. They did not comment or agree or confess. So we get stuck in this logical loop, this vicious cycle of confusion about what to do, what the other person is thinking, and how we can find that out, or what we can do to overcome our fears and just confess, or maybe avoid talking about this altogether if they don't have these kind of feelings as well. So these kind of problems we face in everyday life, and I'm going to make more videos about that, like specifically those problems, but this video is more about the core issue this song is about. So the guy says, I know you're mad, he ain't controlling you, but you still hesitate. Oh, because you choose loyalty. Oh yeah. And I know your history, met him before you peak. He's so connected to that woman you used to be. But the sex, what clogged your memory? A couple of strokes, I put it in, then you belong to me. So the first thing was confirmation of reciprocation of feelings. The second thing is understanding of her dilemma, which is apparently not her controlling partner. The partner she already has right now, he's not controlling at all. So she herself is stopping that exploration of this new experience that she wants to have. She's choosing loyalty, and it's a very interesting point that we'll talk about later in the video in the problem and solution part. She's choosing to be loyal. There is no law, there is no contract. The partner is not even aware possibly of her desires for another man, and he's not controlling, he's not like possessive, and he's not like checking her phone and things like that. So it's her who is in this constant state of this dilemma, like what should I do? If this was simple, like I want this but I'm not allowed to get this, whether it's the government that's stopping me, whether it's my partner that's stopping me, whether it's my parents, if there's anything else, that would be clear at least. Like I want this and these people are stopping me, but she is stopping herself, and whether or not she should stop herself, that's a question of morality, and we'll talk about that later in the problem section. So the crush understands her dilemma, and the next thing he says that she got committed before her peak. Now this is very interesting, the commitment before peak concept. So he's talking about like before she used to be a different person, and it's unclear whether he's saying that before you were not as successful or as beautiful or as intelligent or as like mature and fully like aware of your emotions and things like that, but in some sense he's saying that you were not really you yet when your existing partner met you and got in the relationship on this commitment with you. And that's actually very real thing. Like people get together and then their minds are not fully developed, their careers are not well set, and then later on when they find out that their paths are completely in different directions. For example, a woman who at first is not interested in a career, she is very carefree, she wants to just stay in the home, very introverted, because she has never even tried any working scenario. But then she is in love with her high school sweetheart, and they agreed that, and the guy is of that mindset that she should stay home, take care of the kids and be like a housewife. And then later on the woman goes to college and she figures out that she wants to travel, or she wants to become an actress, or she wants to be an artist or a business executive and have some sort of lifestyle that is outside the home most of the time. And that's definitely going to create a lot of friction and a lot of problems in their relationship later on when they face these kind of issues, these differences in their opinions. And especially if the man doesn't change with time. And maybe it's not even about change. Maybe it's not that she changed later on. Maybe that's who she's always been. She always wanted to travel, but she never even knew that it was a possibility, or even knew that what travel actually is. It's possible. Like, a lot of people go through life without actually knowing themselves. So how can we blame our partners to not know us if we don't know ourselves? So we're definitely going to address this in the solution section of the video. But the point is that the existing partner, is still connected to that past self, which is kind of we all do. When we see something familiar, we want exactly the same treatment the way we used to, whether it's our old high school or like our childhood home or whatever it may be. We expect the same experience that we used to have. This is what nostalgia is all about. We see an old movie and it doesn't feel the same. We don't feel the same excitement or the same experience. And we read the same book, we don't have the same insights anymore. We don't even agree with the same opinions. Like, we do change. And whether it is change or whether we have been like that all along, where we never really knew, that's another philosophical question that we'll talk about some other video. But the point is, it is very real and very relatable that a partner feels connected to the old self of their partner and remember the good times and all that. But one partner, she moves on and she's now different, or at least wants someone different. So the crush later on says that he makes a confident suggestion of experimentation to decide. He says that if you get with me, like if you get together with me for a night, you'll be mine. And he's very confident in this. He says that only that physical intimacy part is clouding her judgment, and once she overcomes her fear and she spends to choose a night to spend a night with him, crush, then she will clear her head and all the confusions will go away. So these are the 5 things that he said. Number 1 was confirmation of reciprocation of feelings. Number 2 was understanding of her dilemma, which was not controlling partner but her own choice of loyalty. Third one was commitment before weak, and 4th one was her partner connected to her past self, and 5th one was confident suggestion of experimentation to decide, because he's confident that once he does that, she'll be able to make up her mind completely. So now that we've broken down this video, let's talk about the problem. The problem is loyalty versus fantasy. Now this is an age-old question, and a lot of people are in favor of either of those. So let's just try and figure out what those are. Loyalty. What exactly is loyalty? Loyalty is what we said we would, but not necessarily should. Think about that for a second. We said we would do something. We would behave in a certain way. We would agree with a certain ideology. We will obey a certain rule. And it's not legally binding. It's not even a handshake agreement. In fact, most conversations or situations where loyalty is expected, it's not even verbally spelled out. No one actually says that I'll be loyal to a person or this country or this institution or this opinion. They just are until they're not. So this is a very sensitive topic to a lot of people, and the reason because it's tightly connected with our own sense of identity, like who we are as a person. Like, are we a loyal kind of person, or do we not stand for anything? It's connected with honor. So it's a very sensitive topic, but in this song, this is about loyalty to a partner that they have agreed to live with, and they no longer want to, because they're feeling the second thing, the contradicting feeling of fantasy. Fantasy is what we want, even if it's not necessarily what we want. Now that's interesting, because we don't know what we want, and we think we want something, but what we actually desire is oftentimes, but not oftentimes, but sometimes, out of our awareness. And what we want, what we think we want, is influenced by so many other things that it's indistinguishable. And a lot of factors can affect it. Sometimes just an emotional bond with someone can be seen or even felt as a desire for intimacy, physical attraction towards a person. And sometimes some sort of nostalgia, some familiarity with a certain trait of a person, or it can happen in anything. Like, we can have a bad batch of ice cream and still love it because it reminds us of something in our childhood, the taste or the smell or something associated with good feelings in our brain. And the same can be true in anything else. Sometimes we just want something else than what we already have, and we see something that may not be what we want, but because we want out of a relationship, we go towards a relationship just for the sake of ending it. And so the basic problem is loyalty and fantasy, the choice between loyalty and fantasy. But what makes it complex, it's simple. If it's just loyalty and fantasy, then the choice becomes simple, that either the person wants it bad enough to break the loyalty promise, or the person is too proud or strict in their, or disciplined in their mind, that they choose to let go of the fantasy for the sake of their principles. But what makes this situation complicated is that not all loyalty is worthy to be kept, and not all fantasies or desires are actually what we want. Think about it. What if someone is in a dead-end job and they want to stay just because they want to stay loyal to that? What if they're killing their own passion and staying in that dead-end job every single day for years and decades just because they want to be loyal to that company? Or even a leader that used to be good for the people, but now it's no longer good. And these kind of questions really make everything so complex. But if we try to break them down, if we try to understand things, we can actually find a solution or figure out a way to navigate through these issues. So we have established that not all loyalty is good. If someone is in an abusive relationship or following a bad leader, or gets stuck in a job, or a million other examples like this, there is no point really in staying loyal to that. In those cases, one should just follow their desire or their fantasy. And it's not even a fantasy. Sometimes it's just a matter of decision. Sometimes people don't even have to know that they have something right waiting for them, or there's something better out there, but they have to just move away from a bad thing that they're in right there. So, and the fantasy is also, like we talked about, and not everything is about what we want. Sometimes it's just something we desire, and it's temporary, and it's bad for our health or relationships, or health in any sense, like physically or emotionally or socially or even financially. Like, we might desire or have a fantasy for like traveling the world, but if someone has a bunch of mortgage debt and a family who's depending on them, and it's not really a right thing to fulfill that fantasy and temporarily escape from those problems, only to completely exhaust all resources and reach a point when nothing can be done, and throwing away a good thing and even the best thing that was in their life. So these kind of complex problems can be solved through 3 steps, especially in terms of relationships. I'm going to tell you 3 steps that you can take, which is your best bet to find a way out of these problems. The first step is discover truth through self-awareness. Now, how many people actually spend time with themselves? How many people can sit and think about their life, like actual session of retrospection? There's a very famous man, Blaise Pascal, that lived a few hundred years ago, and he was a French philosopher. And well, he's not as popular as he should be, because what he said even in those times stands completely like fitting even in today's environment, especially more in today's like society that we live in. He said all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And this actually says it all. We can't sit by ourselves. We can't think. We can't keep quiet. We can't just actually think things through. We are too eager, too anxious, too hyperactive to act, to do something, to say something without actually understanding something. How many of us can actually sit for 1 or 2 hours and do meditation? How many of us can actually sit for even 30 minutes without checking our phone and resisting the urge to do something? Go online, watch a YouTube video, or listen to some music, or walk around. We are too anxious to think. We always want to stimulate our minds with information that it keeps busy and it keeps jumping off from one point to another. And think about how many videos on YouTube do we watch complete? We jump from one to the next, and to what end? What's the point? We want to watch something, we don't really watch it because we get bombarded with these distractions, these urges to do something else, because something else is better in our minds, at least. And that's because we are uncomfortable with ourselves, because we don't know ourselves. The moment we start to think about ourselves and our past and our future and our inside and out, our mind, it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing experience. Once you get to know yourself, there is no greater pleasure. If you know exactly what you want, there is no confusion. There is no question of what to do. There is no problem with making any choices or any even commitments. If you know what you want, then go after it. But most people don't even know what they want. Most people don't even know themselves. So the first step is to get to know yourself. Discover truth through self-awareness, what you're all about, who you are as a person, what you want. Second step is honestly communicate with a partner. Now, this is a thing a lot of people are going to be struggling with, because most people are not completely honest with their partners. They hide little things. They don't want to upset them, or they don't want to upset themselves because of the consequence of telling them, because it might create some sort of argument which they don't want to have. They don't want confrontations. They don't want to be judged. They have all these fears and insecurities. They don't want to be disliked. But that is still an escape or a loophole or some sort of fear-driven action or inaction that is pointless. If you actually want to do something, or if you actually want to say something, you should say that. If it's the truth, you should say that. That's honesty. Because most things that we're afraid of and that keep us from being honest with ourselves or other people, they're not really worth it, because the result is still going to be just a bad experience or a bad life. Because if we are never honest with ourselves or other people, we're just pretending to be something that we're not. And it's such a relief to actually be honest and deal with the consequences, because that is just, at least it's truth. And I know a lot of people will not agree with me on this, but it's okay. That's their life. If you're one of those people, that's okay. I don't judge. I choose to be honest, and I think most people should. And I know there's a lot of complications with that. Sometimes we end up hurting other people. Sometimes we can even increase or exaggerate a problem. I know those risks are present, but I still think that the negative impacts of dishonesty still outweigh the negative impacts of honesty. So they're both difficult, but I choose to go towards the honest one. So I think that's the best way to go, because think about it. If you're feeling desire for someone else, if you have any problem in a relationship, if you don't want to be in that relationship, for example, what is the point of not telling the partner? It's gonna come out anyway. And if someone says that no, it won't come out, it'll just drag on like that, is that a good life? Is that a better life than to reveal what the problem is and even hopefully find a solution to that? Maybe their habits are annoying you. Maybe it's just petty things that are just piling up. Maybe just difference in opinions and just petty arguments that just nagging and these kind of things, or like the lack of attention, and anything it may be. Those problems can be solved, and if they cannot be solved, then think about it. If there are a lot of problems in a relationship, right? There are only two cases: if they are solvable problems or they are unsolvable problems. If you be honest, if you tell them everything, if those problems are solvable, those will be solved. If you don't tell them, then you're just gambling with a random dice that they'll get solved themselves, and assuming that they got created later on, because initially in relationship they were not present, because that's why you got into the relationship in the first place. So if they occurred or they initiated themselves, then how do you expect them to change in the completely opposite direction? Because there's a reason they came in that direction. So chances are they're probably going to get worse, even at least stay the same, more or less. But if you actually talk about them, you can hope to solve them. And the other case, if those problems are unsolvable, even then honesty still works. You can tell them, okay, we have these kind of problems, these are unsolvable problems, and if you can still choose to live with each other, that's great. But choosing to live with each other while living in denial, that's a lot of mental toll. You don't want that. You don't want that kind of dilemma every single day, waking up in the morning and just being bitter and just being unhappy, and even the other person will be unhappy. So what's the point? Just be honest, and you're a team. You're supposed to be taking decisions yourself. Even if those decisions are about separation, you should take them together. And that's my third suggestion, that make a mutual or any decision. Because if you don't change, if you don't decide, if you don't choose something, the bad, unhappy, the negativity in your life is going to continue every single day for the rest of your life. Maybe it'll get solved, maybe not, maybe you'll get used to it, maybe you'll lower your expectations, or whatever case may happen. But it's never going to happen the best way if not honest with them. So be honest and discover truth first, and then honestly communicate with the partner, and then take a mutual decision. And when I said any decision, that means at least make a choice, make an effort. Choose to tell them, choose to figure out a problem, choose to separate if nothing else works, if that's what you want to do. It's better than dragging a bad relationship for years and then moving on. It's kinder too for the other person. So this was the song You Write, and subscribe for more videos. I have a lot of content to upload, so yeah, take care, philosophers.